The woods that I'm standing in right now might not look super significant, but 21 years ago, something incredibly sinister and evil happened right here. On Monday, November 19th, 2001, Louise Chaput should have been returning home from a hike she took in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. But instead, on that very same day, she was reported missing by her boyfriend. This marked the start of a case that would go on to stump even the top investigators for the state of New Hampshire and haunt hikers throughout New England. The day after she was reported missing, police found her car in this very parking lot, located less than 1,000 feet away from the famous Pinkham Notch Visitor Center and the trailhead for popular trails up Mount Washington. But after this discovery, the case went cold, but it didn't remain cold for long. On Thanksgiving Day, 2001, the body of Louise Chaput was located right here in these woods. Now, I don't know the exact location that her body was found at, but I do know that it was somewhere right around here, likely within eyesight of where I'm looking at right now. And I also know that whoever killed Chaput in these woods 21 years ago has never been brought to justice. Whoever committed this crime either died a free man some years ago or remains a free man to this day, still likely living in the area. This is the story of Louise Chaput and murder in the White Mountains. So this is obviously a really sad story, so before we get into it, let's make things a little more fun for just a second and talk about Magic Spoon. I've been hiking in the White Mountains a lot lately, and one of the things that I've been doing to fuel myself for the steep terrain is having Magic Spoon cereal. That's right, Magic Spoon is the sponsor of this video, and you might be thinking, how on earth do you fuel yourself for hiking with cereal? And to that, I'll say, Magic Spoon is not just cereal, but it's actually cereal reinvented. Here are the facts. Each serving has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, which is awesome, and 4 to 5 net grams of carbs. So it's obviously high protein, but it's also keto friendly, gluten-free, and naturally flavored. And speaking of flavors, I'm not gonna lie, until I had Magic Spoon recently, I hadn't really eaten cereal since I was a kid. I never really hated it, but I definitely didn't crave it either. But now, the cravings are on, let me tell you, because Magic Spoon tastes so freaking good. Blueberry Muffin is a new favorite of mine. Their cookies and cream cereal bars are also amazing, by the way. And Magic Spoon is always launching new limited edition flavors. This month's flavors are toasted marshmallow and honey graham. I was so excited when Magic Spoon wanted to sponsor another video of mine because it's so amazing. I love it. My parents also love it too. They stole some of my cereal last time. I think you're gonna love it too. So what you should do is go to magicspoon.com/hiking. When you do that, you're gonna get $5 off your order. You can also use the promo code hiking at checkout as well. You can build your very own variety box. They have so many different flavors like cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, and so much more. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their cereal that it has a 100% happiness guarantee. So if for whatever reason you don't like it, they will refund your money, no questions asked. One more time, magicspoon.com/hiking. You can also click the link at the top of the description or use code hiking at checkout. By the way, when you guys use that link or that promo code, it also helps support the channel. So please go check it out. Thank you so much to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. And with that said, let's get into the story. This is the Diratissima Trail in White Mountain National Forest. You'll understand why that's significant very shortly. So this story is kind of personal to me. I love the White Mountains. This is literally one of my favorite places in the entire world. I've hiked all over the region here, and I've even spent some time living here over the past few years. It really does feel like a second home to me, and I think of it as a very special and honestly peaceful place. But the story that I'm gonna share today is anything but peaceful. 52-year-old Louise Chaput is from Sherbrooke, Quebec, a medium-sized city located about an hour and 45 minutes east of Montreal. Chaput was a mother of 2 daughters, and she worked as a psychologist. She was known for being funny, adventurous, and selfless, often volunteering her counseling services to families who could not otherwise afford them. She was also an avid hiker. One of her friends was quoted saying, "She adored nature and the outdoors." Leading up to November of 2001, Chaput and her friends were in the process of planning a group hike together. However, these plans ended up falling through, and Chaput decided to just head out on her own instead. The location that she chose was the White Mountains of New Hampshire, an area that she was at least somewhat familiar with, having summited the infamous Mount Washington at least once in the past. On the morning of November 15th, 2001, Chaput packed up her hiking gear, said goodbye to her family, and left in her silver Ford Focus, heading towards Pinkham Notch at the base of Mount Washington. Chaput crossed from Canada into the United States at 11:45 a.m. at the Norton, Vermont border crossing, and eventually made her way to the small town of Colebrook, New Hampshire, where she made a purchase at a convenience store. And by 3 p.m., she finally made it to the White Mountains with about an hour and a half of daylight to spare. Now, that might sound crazy to some of you, but those of us that live in the Northeast know that in November, it gets dark really, really early. Chaput obviously knew that too, but after sitting in the car for so many hours, it appears as though she wanted to get out and at least stretch her legs a little bit. And since she had finally arrived at her destination in the White Mountains, why not do that by going for a little hike? This choice seemed like a no-brainer, but because she didn't have much daylight left, Chaput knew that she wouldn't be summiting Mount Washington or any of the other tall peaks surrounding Pinkham Notch. Looking for guidance, Chaput walked into this building right here, the Pinkham Notch Visitor Center, and she asked an employee for a suggestion about a short hike that she could complete before dusk. The employee told her to check out the Lost Pond Trail, which was a short hike that was right across the street from the visitor center. This employee would turn out to be the last person besides Chaput's killer to ever see her alive. Louise Chaput had reservations to stay at the Joe Dodge Lodge located near the visitor center at Pinkham Notch that first night, but records indicate that she never checked in. She was only supposed to be in the White Mountains for the long weekend, and she was planning on returning to Sherbrooke in time for work on Monday, November 19th, 2001. Her coworkers must have been alarmed, however, because on that day, Chaput never showed up. Her boyfriend was also alarmed because it's on this day that he reported her missing. A search was started immediately, and it didn't take long before investigators discovered their first clue suggesting that something had gone wrong. The day after Chaput was reported missing, this parking lot right here became the focus of the search. This is the trailhead for the Diretissima Trail, and police found her silver Ford Focus sitting in one of these very parking spots. The Diretissima Trail isn't the only trail that can be accessed from here, however. Pinkham Notch and all of its trails are literally right up the street, and one of those trails includes the Lost Pond Trail, which is the trail that Chaput had been directed to from the visitor center employee. So now that her car had been discovered, obviously the next step was to look inside of it. A few items that Chaput was known to always carry with her when she went hiking were located inside the car, including her water, some chocolate, and her hiking shoes. This indicated that whenever she left her car there, she was not planning on being out for very long, which also matches up with the account told by the visitor center employee. Her keys were not inside the car, and neither was one of her 2 backpacks, which was a large blue backpack with a Canadian flag on the outside. Investigators also were unable to locate her green down sleeping bag. After the discovery of her car, dozens of searchers from New Hampshire Fish and Game, Mountain Rescue Services, and the U.S. Forest Service, among other groups, continued looking for Chaput or for any clues into what had happened. They struggled through intense wind, blowing snow, and temperatures that were well below freezing. Unfortunately, the first day of searching turned up no additional evidence besides the discovery of her car, and so on the second day, they stepped up their effort and brought in a helicopter from the U.S. Army National Guard. This seemed like a promising move, but by the end of day 2, they still had not been able to locate the missing Canadian hiker. Was Chaput injured, stranded somewhere in the mountains? Had she been a victim of foul play? Or had she simply up and left the region, leaving her car behind to start a new life? Investigators would get an answer to these questions on Thanksgiving Day, 2001, the third day of the search for Louise Chaput. On the afternoon of Thursday, November 22nd, 2001, Louise Chaput's body was found right here, somewhere in this patch of woods I'm standing in right now. I'm not sure of the literal exact spot where it was located, like the exact patch of ground where they found it. I'm not even sure if I really want to know, but I do know that they found her body 100 to 200 yards south of the Glen Boulder trailhead and just a little bit off of New Hampshire Route 16. It was evident to investigators that Chaput had not taken a fall or succumbed to the elements, two things that very often lead to the death of hikers. It was apparent that she had been killed violently and that she put up a fight. Somewhere, likely within eyesight of where I'm standing right now, an intense struggle between innocence and evil took place. And unfortunately, evil won. After an autopsy, it was determined that Chaput had been stabbed to death. She was found wearing black fleece pants, a red nylon jacket, and Reebok sneakers, none of which is really considered hiking apparel, hiking clothing. And so this once again indicated that she was not planning on going for a long hike on the evening that she left her car. Notably absent from the scene were the items that were also noticed to be missing from her car. Her large blue backpack with the Canadian flag on it could not be located, and neither could her car keys. After the visitor center employee had directed her to the Lost Pond Trail, it was assumed this was where Chaput would have hiked. And given her car was located very close to the Lost Pond Trail, this checked out as well. However, her body was not discovered on this trail. It appears that after Chaput parked, she instead decided to hike out on the Diretissima Trail, which links up with the Glen Boulder Trail after roughly a mile. She then must have hiked down towards the Glen Boulder Trailhead, also known as the Glen Ellis Falls Trailhead, before eventually being forced off the trail by her killer. After the search turned into a homicide investigation, investigators put forth a call to the public asking anyone who might have been in that area and noticed anything suspicious to please come forward with information. Now, late November is probably one of, if not the least popular time of year to visit the White Mountains. However, Pinkham Notch is still an incredibly popular spot. And since a full week had gone by between the time that Chaput was last seen and when her body was discovered, police hoped that enough people would have hiked through there that somebody must have noticed something. But unfortunately, no one ever came forward. Pinkham Notch is a very popular spot with tourists. I would even say probably, definitely, the majority of people who visit that area are from out of town. And so by the time the authorities put this call for help out, most people who might have been in the area at the time had already returned home, many of them out of state, most of them probably never even hearing about the crime. The investigation soon went cold, and I hate to say it, but it's still cold even to this day. Nobody has been brought to justice for killing Louise Chaput. There is still hope for the case, however, which remains active to this day, by the way. First of all, her backpack with the Canadian flag on it and her car keys, among a few other items, were never recovered. Now, maybe these items were just buried or lost in the woods somewhere, but there's also a good chance that the killer took them for trophies or for some other reason, and therefore there's a good chance that the killer still has these items to this day. And so if a suspect does emerge someday and investigators find these items in the possession of that suspect, that would be a huge break in the case. And there is one more big piece of evidence that could eventually help bring Chaput's killer to justice. DNA from the killer was recovered from the scene, which will hopefully someday be matched and point a clear finger at the person responsible. But until that happens, we really don't know much else. Authorities have stated that they believe the killing was random. It seems as though they've ruled out the possibility that it was somebody she knew. I mean, maybe that is possible, but authorities really do think that it was just a random killing. She was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, which is extremely scary because The area around the White Mountains is extremely safe, and this kind of thing almost never happens. Authorities have also said that it's likely that her killer was a local living somewhere in the area. And if that's true, there's a good chance that this person still lives somewhere close to this spot, even to this day. If you have any information relating to this case, if you were in the area of the Glen Boulder Trail and Pinkham Notch back in the fall of 2001, please contact the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit using the information down below in the description. My heart goes out to Louise Chaput, her friends, and of course, her family. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching.